Armando Lannucci's Charm Offensive, presented by Armando Lannucci.
Thank you very much, and it must be said, hello. Welcome to Charm Offensive, the show that put the id into midweek, the rut into home truths, and the fat toss into the Chris Moyles breakfast show. And to demonstrate the BBC's commitment to its regional listeners, we're going round the country. To start with this week, we're coming from the delightful town of London. I'll just tell you a few interesting facts about London, for those of you who've never heard of it. London is, of course, the birthplace of The Clash and was once the boyhood home of Prince Charles. Former Wimbledon champion Ivan Lendl once slept in London. And the city still rates itself as one of the main contenders to host the 2012 Paris Olympics. Chelsea Football Club once had a flower show in London. And London's inhabitants, known throughout the world for their cheeky, chirpy charm, will one day be the target for a biological terrorist attack. Okay, also staying with me in London are this week's panel, who are Phil Jupitus, Lucy Porter and Dave Gorman.
Good morning.
Hello.
And before we look at what's been happening this week, can I ask you all if you've had a good time since you arrived in London?
Well, it was what a strange place London is, Armando. Never been here before. I came by the Fenchurch Street line. I left 8 days ago, just got here.
And Lucy, are you a stranger to London?
Well, actually, no, I'm not. I should admit at this point that I actually grew up in London.
Yeah.
It's very exciting because there are, I'm not the only one to have made it big from London. There's Jude Law and Nicole Kidman and Bishop Desmond Tutu.
I've been having a marvellous time since I've been here. I've been minding the gap. Later on, I'm hoping to be loving a duck. And encouraging old Mother Brown to put her knees up.
Is she hoping for a girl? Or?
Very possibly, yes. I'm also hoping, I do read the papers, and I am hoping to indulge in the London hobby of having sex with Abby Titmus.
It is good. I can recommend that, actually, while you're here.
I was trying to do the most London thing you can do, and so earlier on today, I was happy slapped by a beefeater driving a black cab.
Do pick up some souvenirs while you're here as well, because there's, every time I come back I like to bring something. Like this time I've picked up MRSA from Leslie Ash.
Have you been to any of the tourist attractions while you've been here?
No? Have you?
I went to the changing of the spit guard at Pizza Hut in Piccadilly.
I actually went on an Otis Ferry guided tour of the House of Commons. I thought there'd be a queue. We got straight in. No money, nothing. And then all these actors in period costume leapt out, saying nothing like this has happened since 1685, snag their sword in their tights, and then men run after you, and what you do is you escape through a secret tunnel that ends up next to a dummy of your dad in Rock Circus. Well, I touched earlier on the prospects of London gaining the 2012 Olympics. Where do we stand on the London Olympic bid?
I think we're built for failure with sport, the British, aren't we, really? Because we have Tim Henman, the English football team, Paula Radcliffe. It's all that, and no. I think we tend to equate sport with failure. The only positive experience that the British have with sport is getting a half day off on sports day.
Just want to pick up you in the Paula Radcliffe. I mean, she's a success, but the only time she did make that noise...
You're quite right.
Was when she stopped to do a poo in the mouth.
I think that, Phil, you're being unnecessarily negative about this, and for that I applaud you for being a true Brit.
So do we do Britain down then in relation to the rest of the world? We're enormously keen to compare ourselves unfavourably with Europe and America. You know the sort of thing. America has Michael Jackson. We have Jonathan King. Europe has people sitting out in the sun. We have people being given ASBOs for sitting out. America has the Grand Canyon. We have grass. America has Martin Luther King, and as I said, we've got Jonathan King. You know, those sort of tired old comparisons that I wouldn't bore you with.
You wouldn't want to hear that, would you, Jonathan King saying, "I had a dream."
I got a letter from Jonathan. This is absolutely true. I got a letter from Jonathan King from prison.
How old were you?
Well, like to think I'm a very young-looking 41. No, he said, you know, a lot of funny things happen in prison. We must do a sitcom about it sometime. Once I'm out. And I thought, no, you interfere with children. So, yes, so Britain and the world. Britain and Europe.
But we are still the only nation in the world, as far as I'm aware, who have the word great in our name, don't we? Which, you know, Great Britain. And it just seems, you know, because there are other countries who could, you know, they could adopt that. Well, hey, we're Latvia. You know. Have that with the Ukraine.
Well, I don't understand, as Tony Blair talks about, he wants Britain to be at the centre of Europe. And that doesn't wash. If Britain were at the centre of Europe, Europe would also include Ascension Island and most of Florida.
Then I, too, want Britain to be at the centre of Europe.
I always think that this idea of a special relationship we have with America is a bit like the relationship between Jonathan and Paul Ross. You know, one of them...
Can you explain which of the Ross brothers do you think we are?
Well, we are not the all-conquering one who is on every television programme that gets any viewers. We are the one who is a mumbling wreck who lives in a car and only appears on ITV2's coverage of Celebrity Love Island in order to pay his alimony. We're that one.
I always thought that was more Canada. And we're the one that no one can quite remember the name of.
No, people go on. You get all these headlines about, you know, we won't win the Olympic bid because, you know, we'll mess it up. It'll be over budget. It won't get done on time. And I say, poo-poo. That's what they said about the Dome. And Wembley Stadium. And the Channel Tunnel. And the film version of the Thunderbirds.
Can you imagine watching the 4x400 metres butterfly and they're tear-arsing along and they still haven't bothered to get the pregnant aerobic mums out of the pool?
Oh, dear. Pregnant diving. Going to be some huge belly flops, really, aren't there?
pregnant any sport, though, is quite... it's just the pregnant Olympics would be fantastic.
Why not? We've got the Paralympics. Why not the pregnant Olympics?
There's trampolining in the Olympics.
The pole vault will be hilarious.
Because what you could do is you could have the pole vault, and then if on landing they did shoot the baby out, have a long jump for the baby.
In one fell swoop, you would have completed 1/5 of the decathlon. Okay, before we move on, I just want to update you on the frightening scenes that happened last week in the studio. Not in this studio, obviously. We're in London this week. In our regular studio. You may remember that a spokesman from the Met Office came on the show to explain the changes to the BBC weather map and that he was bodily lifted up by the studio audience and taken out and burned alive in a giant wicker cloud. Quite upsetting scenes, but I'm pleased to say they worked because, yes, the map has been retilted. Once again, we have a bigger north and a fatter Scotland. So yes, this week has seen a victory for the small people who with pride can cry, we are not small, we're small-ish. But that being said, the uprising is now getting out of hand. Reports are coming in of riots all over Britain as crowds demand the return of things to how they should be. In Leeds, police have turned water cannon on 30,000 rioters, demanding we bring back the old editions of Ask the Family and the Hovercraft. Well, in Leicester, a man has set fire to himself to demand the return of the butterscotch option in boxes of black magic. Don't know if anyone else has any news of the situation.
Apparently, a pressure group in Galbaldisham in Norfolk has demanded the phasing out of mugging and the return of Raffles, gentleman thief.
And just news in from Hunstanton, a group of obese teenagers are protesting about their writing against type 2 diabetes. They're saying they want to contract type 1 diabetes or diabetes gold, as we're calling it. I don't know if it is a group of teenagers or just one really big wobbly one. I'm not sure on that.
OK, well, we'll update you on these trivia riots throughout the show. OK, we've touched on it already, but it's time now to look at the vexed question of teenage pregnancy. in the part of the show called Mine's a Red Bull and Vodka, I've Just Given Birth. Now, this subject's come to the fore with the news of the three teenage sisters, aged 16, 14 and 12, who've each had children, named Houdwina, Asbo and Tag. Sex experts are starting to blame our sexual profligacy on over-explicit storylines in the media. For example, on television this week was the first British showing of the gay wedding edition of The Simpsons. And a few months ago on Radio 4, there was the historic broadcast of the first ever gay kiss on The World at One. You must have heard it. It happened in an interview between Nick Clark and Tory MP David Davis in a discussion about the Hutton report. In case you didn't hear it, here's a quick reminder.
David Davis was for many years chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and now he is the Conservative shadow to the Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott.
The first thing to say is that the issue wouldn't have arisen if they hadn't released his name, and they must have known that when they released his name. This is not a government that's been particularly bothered about saying no to select committees when they ask for individual named civil servants to appear in front of them.
You say spin. I mean, the way it's described, a lot of the Ministry of Defence civil servants were asked about this, and then they said, no, it was to do with a great public interest.
Well, I don't know quite what the great public interest is in that respect. He used the word presentation, presentationally difficult, and
David Davis.
So, T, what do you think? Are we, as broadcasters, are we irresponsible, sex-wise?
Educationally, we do have to. I mean, the mother of these three sluts.
You're going to go with that, aren't you?
There were so many contraceptive methods available to them. Obviously, the contraceptive pill, barrier, coil, and as myself, the father of two daughters, I favour the crossbow and pepper spray. And sitting on the roof, brooding.
I mean, is there a good side to this? Any good can come out other than the fact that, at least the children will have someone they know at school?
I mean, there's no doubting that teenagers do copy what they see on TV, though. There's a kid on my street. All last week he was time-travelling and gurning.
People were talking about Celebrity Love Island and saying that that's to blame and pointing the finger at that. And it's just... But there's actually no sex on Celebrity... There's no love on... There's no celebrities on Celebrity Love.
So what about us? I mean, Radio 4, do you think we should go down this? I mean, I know, for example, in the Moral Maze, they have put in thermal microphones to detect whether any of their panellists are actually having sex.
Apparently Libby Purvis goes off like a threepenny banger. She's really...
I have it on good authority that Nicholas Parsons takes just a minute.
Hey. I see what you've done there. Well, back to the trivia riots now, and we've just heard that 1,000 people in Gloucester have torched the town hall demanding the return of Word 95.
In Bromley, there's been some trouble at a supermarket by people who are just terrified by the sheer cleaning power of Sillet Bang.
Well, at Basildon, I think there's a trouble spot now in Basildon. Some very slightly confused right-wing people in Basildon have started a campaign to bring back the hanging gardens of Basildon.
Okay, more news on those riots as they come in, but now it's time for everyone's inner thoughts. This is something we launched last week. Once again, in Charm Offensive, we've fitted our panel up to new technology which allows you to hear our inner thoughts. The listener at home can hear what we're actually thinking by pressing the interactive switch on the radio.
What if you can get quicker than a quick fit fitter?
Thinks, if a child using sign language swears, does its mother tell it to wash its hands in soap and water?
Thinks. Now, did I leave some milk out for Will's self?
Thinks, when I get home tonight, I think I'll run over a badger.
Thinks, oh, that's Armando Lannucci. I was thinking of the other one. Thinks.
Two thoughts at the same time.
George Orwell called that double think.
Thinks, I wish I hadn't eaten that Shire horse.
Thinks, if only we could harness Jonathan King's energy for good. We could have Jonathan King farms. A whole town could be powered off one Jonathan King protesting his innocence. But would we ever want to use Jonathan King innocence-protested heated water to have a bath?
Thinks, monkey plumbers. Yeah, that could work.
That's right, I'm just getting reports that the middle-class insurgents who stormed Parliament are demanding the return of much simpler weathermen like Bill Giles, and that they'll cut off Nicholas Soames's chins one by one until the demands are met. OK, and now we come to the vexed question of high and low culture. Professor John Carey of Oxford University has just brought out a book called What Are the Arts For?, arguing that anything, even the old soap opera Crossroads, can be regarded as art, if we want it to be. So, as the Queen chooses Rolf Harris to paint her official 80th birthday portrait, absolutely true, and as a digital frog tops the charts, it's time to ask everyone here, is Professor John Carey of Oxford University a Satan?
Crazy Frog, of course, beat Coldplay to #1. This is the cultural shorthand for what has happened here. You know, if I was Chris Martin of Coldplay, I think I'd be glad, because the animated, not real, tiny penis amphibian, surely that will take a little bit of the media heat off of Chris. As far as I'm aware, Crazy Frog hasn't done any interviews yet, nor indeed has he fertilised any Hollywood stars, made any children with dumb names. There's nothing there of Crazy Frog other than his...
Sorry, I think I got a call coming in.
There is the lack of context that gets me, because what is crazy about, I mean, is it, you know, the fact that it wears a crash helmet? About, you know, that, surely even on an imaginary motorcycle, that's just common sense, isn't it?
The thing I didn't know until I started reading about this Crazy Frog was that the guy who does the noise and the guy who does the animation have never met. So we're actually going to need two posses. Well, I just think for the benefit of BBC Radio 4 listeners, maybe if we just remind them what this Crazy Frog sounds like.
Ding 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 ding.
Sorry, I think I've got a call coming in.
And that's magically been transformed into the chart-topping sound that is... I think I've just done the first bit of DJing on Radio 4. But I also wonder whether we try to popularise high art a lot by putting it in lists. There's lots of lists that we bring up. I mean, even Melvin Bragg's show on Radio 4 in our time is now launching the 100 greatest philosophers of all time thing. Yeah. But there is a sort of junk mail that we, you know, F-list celebs get. Which is
are you F now?
Yes.
Well done!
Yeah.
When
We
did that
always
happen?
draw up a fresh list at the end of the season.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I didn't see it this year. Well done. Well done.
I've got to wait for Titmus to drop, and then I've got her place. That's...
Titmus and Titchmarsh are in the playoffs for A. No, there is a sort of a junk mail we get, which is Channel 4 are doing a programme called Top 100 Cardboard. And we'd really love it if you took part, because we're sure you'd have something really interesting to say about cardboard.
I had the one where Channel 4 were doing a thing about dance. And they talked to me for like an hour about dance. It's like, because I used to go to the clubs in Essex, and they wanted to talk about the Essex club scene. And they said, and I talked for about half an hour. And at the end of it, they went, would you dance for us? And that's all they used, fatty dancing. look, fat bloke dancing, fat bloke dancing!
Can I just say, Phil, in their defence, the footage of you dancing was very funny.
It's all over the internet, isn't it? We set it to music and bring it out as a ringtone.
Where I got the lightsaber. It's the crazy pig.
The other thing they try to do is pass off innovation. Anything now is just passed off as innovation. So they're talking about the innovation in Big Brother of transparent walls. That's Windows. OK, well, any discussion about high culture has to, I've alluded to him already, has to take in Melvin Bragg. His Radio 4 show, In Our Time, is unashamedly intellectual, discussing big themes with hot academics. And also this week, he engaged in a social experiment when he and 13 other randomly chosen 20-somethings were locked in a house and asked to debate the French Revolution continuously, 24 hours a day for 11 weeks. Let's just see how that show started off.
With me to discuss the French Revolutionary Terror is Mike Breuers, lecturer in modern history at the University of Oxford and fellow of Lady Margaret Hall.
Does anyone see my G-strings?
And Tim Blanning, professor of modern European history at the University of Cambridge.
So I had 2 of them, and I just washed them out in the sink in the kitchen and left them on the side.
No, I'd seen them, mate.
Mike Breuers, let's just start in 1789.
It was a pink one.
We've had the French
and a
Revolution, we've got the
leopard print
Estates General, and then what?
Do you want a cup of tea?
Yeah, well, I think we've got to see the terror between 1792 and 1794 as a revolution within the revolution. Because it really does start in 1789.
Melvin!
That's how we have a reforming king.
one. Melv, take sugar.
Very much a reforming king.
Hey, Professor. Yeah, you. Got a lemon in it.
Thank you very much. Well, we're all having a great time here in London. Despite the city being a hellhole. So now it's time to talk to the Londoners in the audience in the part of the show called Talking to Local Yokels on 4. You, sir, what's your name?
Joe.
Joe. Is that rhyming slang? For bowl? Glad to see you made it here through the fog. What do you do, Joel?
I'm a writer.
You're a writer. And who do you write for? Do you write for urchins?
Yes.
Do you know Charles Dickens? And you, ma'am, I notice you're sitting down. Is that the Lambeth Walk?
Yes, it is. It's very popular in London these days.
Don't get lippy. Soft southern jet. I can deck you anytime, just remember it. I may look small, but that's only because you're seeing me through your southern eyes, where I'm tilted away from you.
I have a question for these Londoners, is it? Londoners? London? Are you a real Londoner? I thought you'd be more pearly.
Well, I'd like to thank very much the people of London. And one other thing we've noticed that Cockney rhyming slang's continually evolving in this city. So to take account of recent trends, we go over now to Vaughan Savage with a list of the best Cockney rhyming slang contemporary upgrades that people here are downloading onto their vomit and bile mobile.
Lemon and lime. Wembley won't be completed on time. Jimmy White. Brownfield development site. I've got an Ivor Cutler. Tickets to see McCalmont and Butler. Prisoner of Zenda. Illegal sausage vendor. Syrup of fig. Rebecca Lewis and a pig. Jesus and God. A mugger stole my iPod. Ballum and Tooting. Drive-by shooting. Hinge and bracket. A hinge and a bracket. Apples and pears. Breasts.
Okay, just heard that 200 bucks ladies are botoxing each other to death until Kit Kat stops mucking about.
When I get home, nice hot bath, candles, Enya. Yeah, some me time.
Thinks, when I get home, a bottle of Jack Daniels, the last days of Sodom, and a harness. Some me time.
Thinks. Of course, they call asylums care homes these days. It's madness gone politically correct.
Thinks. I wonder how many people know that the twist in the Da Vinci Code is that the old English cripple is the villain. I'd best not say that out loud. It would ruin a very good book.
Okay, well, this week, allegations emerged that the Make Poverty History bracelets are actually made in Chinese sweatshops. People are laughing. That's absolutely true. I mean, the allegation is true. It's true that there was an allegation. I'm not for once... I don't want to be sued by the Make Poverty History campaign. who, let's face it, will sue me for an awful lot of money.
No, they wouldn't want to make you poor.
Oh, absolutely. So we can actually say anything we like about them and they won't sue us.
We've reduced the Lannucci to poverty.
So much so that, in fact, I'm now wearing a Make Poverty History band. Just time to ask the team what bands and bracelets they're wearing tonight.
I wear a brown leather one with a metal disc, which is called a Know the Time bracelet.
I'm wearing a Make Me Stop Drowning inflatable band on each arm.
I'm wearing a very tight elastic band to show my support for people with big purple engorged hands.
I also have a white one, which is the Make Bono history.
My son came home from school with one that said Make Cognitive Dissonance Geography.
I've got one here that if you just wear higher up the arm, it just says, take heroin now.
I just want to explain, this isn't a band, it's actually a belt for Callista Flockhart.
I've got one in every colour so I can stay in the pool all day.
Just time to see how Melvyn Bragg and his 13 French Revolution debaters are getting on.
Basically, as soon as somebody thinks you're suspicious, then you're a suspect, and then you are guilty.
Well, that's not very strict. You said very strict truth. There's nothing strict about that whatsoever. Were you being ironic?
Man, just get off her case. She don't know. I don't disrespect her like that. They're not strict as
you didn't
rules,
look ironic, but that's nothing.
Leave it out, you pillock.
They're not harsh at all. They're completely the opposite. That's the point. The point is, they say, I suspect you, Rebecca Slattery, so you're in prison, and you've done in time to cool your heels in prison. You're off to the guillotine. That's the point.
Big-head bully.
Thank you very much. Good night.
That was Armando Lannucci's Charm Offensive, presented by Armando Lannucci. The guests this week were Dave Gorman, Phil Jupitus and Lucy Porter. It also featured Dan Tetzel and Alison Senior. It was written by Armando Lannucci and John Holmes, Danny Robbins, Ian Martin, Will Smith and Dan Tetzel. And the producer was David Tyler. The programme was a Positive production for the BBC.
Now, at this point, most Radio 4 listeners will have switched off, OK? But for listeners who remain loyal to the programme, to the dying death, we've got a little extra here. It's the first radio show with its own added extra, yeah, DVD extra. Because as we were ploughing through that the original Melvyn Bragg in our time recording, at one point, this is absolutely true, we haven't doctored this in any way, at one point, one of the panellists burped. OK? So here it is now. Listen out carefully. Listen out. Here it is.
Mike Bros, let's just start in 1789. We've had the French Revolution, we've got the Estates General, and then what?
Yeah, well, I think you've got to see the terror between 1792 and 1794 as a revolution within the revolution.
Radio 4 listener, only you and me heard that. Bye-bye.